Today we're at the Light of the World Church here in Sarasota International, and there's human beings here who are looking for health care. And we see doctors and we see people who are taking advantage of vaccinations. When we think about health care and the lack thereof in the black community and in any community, why is it so important for human beings to stay on top of their health?
Well, James, it's important no matter what color you are to stay on top of your health because our health makes sure we have longevity. And especially in the African American and communities of color, we have to be a little bit more prevalent because a lot of times our communities don't have the access or insurance to get quality health care. So organizations like ours and the Cobb Institute and the Gulf Coast Medical Society and MHI, we have come together along with the health department and other agencies to make sure that communities of color have not only equal access, but to have access to all medical care that everyone deserves a right to have.
When you see human beings stop by everyday citizens and take advantage of the opportunity to stay current, if you will, or get the new upgrade on a vaccination, how satisfying can something like that look?
It's really satisfying. It's great, because a lot of times, we go back to what's happened historically, in communities of color, the Tuskegee, experiment and all of that. And we get afraid of vaccinations and health care. But when you're able to really educate your community on the benefit on why we need to participate in vaccinations and other boosters and stuff like that, and then they come out by the numbers to do that, it's very, very satisfying that your advocacy work is not in vain. They're hearing you and they're doing something about it.
Sarasota history. Recently in Newtown, there was a parade. Over the years and previous generations, there was a parade that was symbolic every Easter for several generations. It went away, and recently it was able to come back. When you think about the parade over the years and from yesteryear, why is that parade so symbolic, and why is that important to a 4-year-old or to a 84-year-old?
I grew up being a native of Sarasota, so I grew up in the 70s and the 80s where we look forward to Easter Sunday. We go to church, we all got our Sunday's best on, we get out of church and we stand on the side of the roads, and watch the different floats and the dance team and the band teams because it was just a family community day of unity and fellowship and enjoying one another and just having a good time. And yes, it went away for about 20 years and it's good to see it back because now my grandchildren can now experience what my children and I experienced, back in the 60s and the 80s and the early 90s and right before the 2000s before it went away. So it's good that some of that historical family bond, family time has brought itself back. So this current generation can experience really what family community is all about.
The NAACP has been around since 1909, and here we are in 2023. As we look at over the years what the NAACP has been able to do as a champion of human beings, talk a little bit about the NAACP now, why it's still prevalent, why it's needed. You look at the Suncoast, you look at Florida, and you look at the United States of America.
Well, the NAACP is more prevalent now than it probably was in 1909. I mean, because some of the same issues that we had in 1909 we're still having in the year 2023. It's just got a different face on it. Different face, different color, but the agenda behind it is the same, to be an oppressed society, meaning a group of people trying to oppress a certain group of people. And because we still see some of those things happening, organizations like the NAACP and the ACLU and other grassroots organizations are very, very prevalent now because we still have to be on the forefront and be the voice for the voiceless and the change agent that our communities need. We have D&I being tackled throughout Florida and actually around this country. And therefore, because of those kinds of issues, we have to be on the forefront and to say, hey, listen, this is not what our forefathers really intended for our countries and our societies to be like.
Mr. Harvey, the concept of voting, why is voting so important?
Well, voting dictates really everything. I was at an event earlier, spoke on a panel earlier that was sponsored by the Boulets, and actually voting came up. And voting is very important to the fabric of who we are as a society, because voting dictates who represent us on a local level, a state level, and a national level. And we have to be involved in that political process if we want to see changes. The problem that we're having now in these days is that we are really not doing what we need to be doing at the ballot box. We're not turning out the way that we're supposed to turn out in order to combat some of these politicians and issues that we see in the forefront of what's happening today.
In closing, record growth here on the Sun Coast. You look up and every 5 minutes someone else is in. How special is it? And talk a little bit about paradise, as it were, and you've been able to experience it over the years.
Man, I mean, the growth here in Florida, man, is just it's actually mind-boggling with the amount of individuals that are moving, to the state of Florida. And that's why we see the housing market the way that it is, because you got to have housing to put these people. I think, what is it, like 1,000 people, a month or something like that are moving into, the Sunshine State. How do you keep up with that? And with that brings its good and it brings its bad, because you get different, political thought processes, and then you get the economy kind of skyrockets. And, those of us that have been here, for, a couple of decades now, because of all of the movement is going here, you having to pay almost $5 for a loaf of bread when just a year and a half ago, a loaf of bread was only $1 and some change. So you have to kind of deal with all of those kind of issues when you see the amount of growth that is happening, in the Sunshine State.
In closing, Juneteenth is right around the corner. And again, that's another episode where people can look back to a painful past, but look to a bright future.
I'm excited about Juneteenth coming around the corner, right around the same weekend as Father's Day, so we can celebrate two things, Juneteenth and Father's Day. Juneteenth, and again, is a way to come back and celebrate our history, even though it was a painful history. But again, we need to always be reminded of where we come from, and where we're going. So we have to have those events like Juneteenth, because it ever so reminds us of that, hey, we're on the right track. We're making it. We're persevering. We're pushing through, and we're becoming a progressive community.